I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on GBN, we're unlocking the hidden strengths of ADHD with an amazing author. Her name is Kitana Kattan, and she has a powerful new book out there. It is called Harnessing the Power of Adult ADHD. It is a practical self-help guide packed with real-life strategies to boost focus, productivity, and creativity. Whether you're newly diagnosed or navigating ADHD for years, this guide helps you thrive, not just survive. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put her on TV today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like her by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing her amazing book. The links are below this interview. Kitana, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you, Logan, and thank you for the kind introduction.
It's my pleasure. This is a wonderful book. A lot of people have either diagnosed or undiagnosed ADHD. And for a lot of people, it's not a weakness, it's a strength. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Exactly. Actually, that was one of my main reasons for writing it, because in the 30 years of working as a special ed tutor and executive functioning coach, I'm always taken aback by two things. One, how little they really know about ADHD. Even psychiatrists barely really explain it. They tell people they have a hard time focusing, paying attention, and impulsivity. And there's so much more. Yes, there are a lot of issues with ADHD, but if you understand it, and that's my job, is to educate people and then empower them with that knowledge. Because once you have self-knowledge about what ADHD is, and it empowers you to take control of it and use it to your advantage. Like you said, it can be your superpower. But I think what I try to do in this book is help people understand that it's not just impulsivity and lack of control, that there's also something called time blindness. For a lot of us with ADHD, time doesn't really make sense because we tend to hyper focus. That's another misconception of ADHD. They think we can't pay attention. Actually, the opposite. When we're interested, we dive in and we lose sense of time. So that's why we suffer with time blindness, but we also struggle with our social battery because we have to spend so much time, monitoring what we say, our impulsivity. So we do struggle with a couple of issues. But once we understand that, then we say, okay, so how do we deal with it? And that's why my book, I try to give a lot of actionable strategies for you to take control of your ADHD and harness its power. So for example, if your social battery is, short and you're going to Thanksgiving where you're going to be with, so many people, maybe the day before, don't do much, take some time, decompress. And I give a lot of strategies on emotional regulation, what you should do with it. So it's like preparing for social interactions and then, having a calm down afterwards. So you're literally like a battery, you're charging yourself and you are executing it when you need. But as far as the power of ADHD, it's phenomenal. The energy that we have, the creativity, the nonlinear thinking, there's a lot of power that we have. We just have to take control of it so that it doesn't take control of us. So that's my biggest issue with executive functioning. They come to me complaining about ADHD and I tell them, okay, yes, there are a lot of struggles, but you can take control of it. And you don't need to be medicated. I'm not medicated. Do we have anxiety? Absolutely. Do we have, sometimes addictive behavior or we tend to go overboard? Absolutely. But I teach people how to moderate those impulses. So, yeah.
What are some of the techniques to help moderate those impulses if you tend to, like you said, go overboard, maybe talk too much at times or eat too much at times or whatever your impulsivity is?
Right. So actually, this is where the emotional regulation or dysregulation that I talk about, I want people to be very mindful of constantly. It's almost like being in therapy with yourself. You're constantly monitoring everything you say, interrupting conversations, which I tend to do a lot, or jumping in with a thought because, most of us just, the thought comes in and we just blurt it out. So I try to tell people, to breathe slowly. I know deep breathing for a lot of people, they think yoga. I have a horrible time meditating, but I do deep breathing a lot to calm myself for this interview, to if I'm going to meet people or going to be in awkward situations or with a crowd. So I'm constantly monitoring my breathing. I'm constantly aware of active listening. Let me hear what they're saying. Like you just learn to control your impulse by being aware that you're impulsive. So there's a lot of self-awareness in what I ask people to do, to practice. And there's a lot of strategies in the book, but what I say is try, because what works for me might work differently for somebody else. And the truth is, Logan, I read an article, I want to say in 2004 or 2005 by Dr. Hallowell, I think Hallowell, and it was called Overload Circuit. And he talks, and that was an eye opener for me because I always thought ADHD people, but the way he discusses our world and how overstimulated we are. He talks about the chronic stress of the high demand, the cognitive overload, and he actually termed something called ADT, attention deficit traits. So there are a lot of people who are not ADHD, but are struggling with this overwhelming information, social media, the constant distractions, the stress. So I honestly think my book is not just for ADHD, for anyone, because we live in a very highly charged cognitive stress world. I mean, it is crazy how many people are struggling to organize. So some of my strategies are about time management, how to take that mental agility that we have and harness it into, like specific goals during the day, like set up your schedule. Find times where you can hyper focus, let it go, do a deep dive, but time yourself, get out of it. So I give a lot of different strategies to how to do it, but people have to try it and see what works for them. Does that answer? Yeah,
Absolutely. I think a lot of the negativity that's associated with ADHD comes from school. Because in
definitely.
school, they want you to do one thing. They want you to conform. They want you to be like everyone else. So the super bright kid who is staring out the window, dreaming about sending people to Mars one day and how he can create a rocket to do it, is labeled, different,
Mm,
bad, having a disorder. And that's not true. This is just a child who has a lot of energy, a lot of
absolutely.
vision, and perhaps even hyperintelligence that he or she is bored with what's going
Absolutely.
on around them, right?
Absolutely. I mean, don't even get me started on the educational system. It needs to be rechanged because I think we don't. There's Howard Gardner. He talks about the multiple intelligences. He's a Harvard professor and author. And the truth is, we don't teach like this multi-sensory interactive way. It's very boring. It's the stand and deliver style, like
Right.
college, and it just doesn't work. So for my ADHD kids, I have to teach them something called note-taking, active listening. So it forces them to listen, to take notes, but I'm kind of problem solving the problem. I wish I could change the way we teach, like appeal to the visual learner, the creative learner. There are schools like the Lab School of Washington where I worked and my son went, which is very multi-sensory. Until now, my youngest son is 35. He remembers what he learned about Greek mythology because they used to wear the toga and address themselves in their Greek names. And you enter a classroom, it's all, papier mache. It's very creative, very artistic, a lot of music. So that's how he retains information. And most kids remember that you're right. Kids are bored. They're over labeled. There is a stigma. And actually, the first thing I tell kids when I work with them or young adults, I try to remove that shame and say, and I mentioned people like Michael Phelps, Simone Biles, I think that's her name, and all these fabulous people who accomplish so much by using their ADHD. So, and as far as intelligence, most ADHD people are highly intelligent. But it's hard for them to focus when they're not interested. So, there's that scattered skills. They do really well in what they love, and they don't really do very well in what they don't love. And teachers don't get that. They give them preferential seating or a little bit extra time, but it doesn't do what it should be doing. Education is not serving them.
Students
Yeah.
will get A's and F's in school. That student is not a C student. That's a highly intelligent student who cares about some subjects and
Yes,
doesn't care about other subjects. And it's as
exactly.
simple as that. And
Exactly.
fortunately, the one size fits all approach to education and even in the workplace
Absolutely.
doesn't work. I mean, because in the workplace, these people you have who might not conform to hours the way you want or might be, you know, seemingly distracted can be some of the most productive people if they are managed in the right way, right?
Absolutely. And actually, in the overload circuits, he talks about these highly intelligent people who are underachieving precisely for that. So
Mhm.
some of my adult ADHD clients, executive functioning, some of them I tell them you need to change your job. Sitting 9 to 5 behind a desk is not serving you. So a lot of times, they need to be in a creative place where they can brainstorm, where they can exchange ideas, where their curiosity and their natural inclination is aligned with their job. That's another thing that I see a lot of struggle with adults. And I really tell them to, sit back and think about, their path of life that includes their job and how to align their strengths to that job. But you're right, there are so many people who are miserable and underperforming, even though they have a lot of intelligence. But I keep hoping that the more they educate themselves about what is ADHD and understand the struggles and the strength and work through the struggles, I think people can accomplish. There's no limit. I
Exactly.
just,
You've got to get past that misnomer that it's a hard,
exactly.
it shouldn't even be called a disorder. It's a
I,
difference.
I know it's
You
a
know,
difference. Exactly.
that's what I say. What's one small change a viewer or a reader could make right now or today to start thriving with ADHD?
I think it's going to sound kind of cheesy, but I think self-acceptance, embrace it. Don't keep so many people. I think one of the biggest thing, and I end up feeling like I'm being a therapist to a lot of people, is to tell them, stop judging it. I think for so many people, including me, I walked around with the label weird all my life because I didn't understand what was going on. I was so hyperactive. They would literally tie my uniform to a chair at school because I was rocking. I was like ready to run and burst out of my skin. So deep breathing really helped me. But I think the acceptance, because I can give you so many different tips, but just the acceptance, take it in. I have neurodivergence. I'm not neurotypical. I'm not going to be neurotypical, and that's okay. So that acceptance of saying, okay, so I do have ADHD. How do I go about functioning every day in a typical neurotypical world? Because that's the dominant world. How do I fit in? But without the judgment. Say, okay, I'm special. I really believe we're special. I'm blessed with my ADHD. My energy is this way 24. I mean, as long as I'm awake, 9 o'clock at night, I have this energy.
Exactly. Yeah, me too. I go 180 miles an hour all the time
Exactly.
and I
Exactly.
enjoy it. I don't want to slow down.
Uh-huh.
I think more quickly. I read more quickly. I move from one topic to the next more quickly. But I
Uh-huh.
think what you've struck upon today is very, very important. Self-acceptance. It's
Yes.
true with everyone in life. Once you learn to accept that you're different and that
Uh-huh.
everybody is different, people are going to be
Exactly.
taller, shorter, fatter, thinner, more
Exactly.
energetic, less energetic, whatever it might be, everybody is different. Learn to laugh at yourself.
Exactly.
Learn to find the humor in it.
Uh-huh.
And then you won't be afraid of others laughing at you because you're laughing along with them when you
Exactly.
feel like you've overtalked or been
Right.
over energetic. And
Yeah.
then the third thing you mentioned today, which I think is very important, is the conversation that we have with ourselves
Yeah.
is vital, where you can say to yourself, I've said enough on this topic.
Right.
I've addressed it enough. I tend to overwhelm people too. My son will ask me for advice, and I'm like, you can do this, you can do that, you can do this. And I'll even say to him, I said, I know I've told you everything I need to tell you. I'm going to stop now. You
Exactly.
know,
And I actually call myself out. So a lot of times I'll be talking and I have a brain fart and I tell them, whoops, I had a brain fart. And
yeah.
people laugh with me. Absolutely. You should be writing a book on
Well, I
ADHD.
appreciate it. Well, reading books like your books have helped
Yeah.
me. That's for
No.
sure.
Yeah.
And exactly, if you lose your
Yeah.
train of thought, fess
Right.
up to it in
That's
front of
exactly.
everybody.
Not
Sorry, I
feel
forgot what I was going to say. I had that
exactly.
problem in school. That's why, make a joke out of it.
Actually,
And
I'll just say something something before this interview. I was telling my friends, I know so much about ADHD. That's not what I'm worried about. I'm worried that Logan will ask me a question, and 15 minutes later, I'll be like, what was the question? After I rambled, because I do have that stream, I tend to talk a lot.
Right.
I find my way back and I always
Yep.
make the connections, but sometimes I lose people along the way, but I've learned to check in.
Yep.
So, I just don't find it a shame. If anything, I'm proud of it. And I want everybody to feel proud about being so alive in a way. I mean, we really are
Exactly.
very special in a great way. So that's my takeaway.
Exactly. If we were
Really,
all the kids sitting there perfectly in
yeah.
class, George Washington was the first president of the United States, repeating like robots what we're taught by the people who are force feeding us like Peking ducks, we would be having a very boring, unachieving world right now. The name of the book we've been talking about today is Harnessing the Power of Adult ADHD, a practical self-help guide. It is a must read for anyone ready to turn distraction into direction. Kitana, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Logan.
I appreciate your time, your insight, your wisdom on this subject. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on the Global Book Network.